there's real science, and then there's aliens fiction. I didn't hear a question, but the answer is aliens. Space, therefore aliens. That's the best and main argument for aliens. It's a non sequitur fallacy. Space, therefore flying spaghetti monster aliens. That is the same logic as space, therefore aliens. So you're a hypocrite if you believe in aliens, but not in the flying spaghetti monster aliens. Such a thing even possible? Yes, it is. But you were indoctrinated by the establishment and Hollywood, teaching you to believe in only certain kinds of extraterrestrials, typically anthropomorphic. Ancient aliens on the History Channel, the Comedy Central channel. I don't always have answers to life's greatest mysteries. Wait, I do, it's aliens. David Icke, who promotes this reptilian myth, is a shill whose job it is to discredit people who question the government by associating them with his nonsense. Alex Jones is another shill. He's a Zionist. And he goes out of his way to look crazy and act crazy, and he gets invited by the establishment because they love that he discredits people who question the government by his antics. Anyway, Neil deGrasse Tyson said, if I were ever abducted by aliens, the first thing I'd ask is whether they came from a planet where people also deny science, so-called science. So he believes in that aliens myth, which is as irrational as believing in the flying spaghetti monster, Mr. so-called scientist. Steven Spielberg's E.T. is propaganda for aliens, propaganda against the Bible, indirectly, because aliens are anti-Bible, and the fact and reality is anti-aliens because whenever you look at space, there are no aliens. Now, this poster is based on the Renaissance painting of the creation of Adam, where Adam is depicted as a European by that painter because he wasn't accurate at all, and God was depicted as an old man because he didn't understand that God doesn't age the way that mortals do. Anyway, the position of the boy's hand here matches the position of what is supposed to be God's hand. So the message is clear that man is God. That's a Luciferian lie. And by the way, in the original, you have the painter is actually Luciferian also, because he depicts man as not giving a damn. See the hand just hanging out? And he depicts God as reaching out to man, like man, and he also puts man's hand above God's hand, which is saying man is above God or equal to God. And God is trying to be with man, and man doesn't give a damn. The real God wants to be with man, but if man rejects God, God eventually abandons man to his lies, so man's guilt can increase, so that God can burn him to a higher degree because he hates him. God hates sinners. They lied to you when they said God doesn't hate you. God hates you. And that's why you need to repent, because if God hates you and you die, God's going to unleash his wrath upon you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you denying that there's a hell and an afterlife is wishful thinking that you can get away with being selfish when you die. I already proved my religion right in this series already, let alone the other series on how Jesus is the way. Atheism is the opium of criminals who wish to get away with being selfish when they die. There's no proof there's no God. There's no refutation of my religion. There's only strawman fallacies and other fallacies against my religion, such as using Roman Catholicism, Satan's #1 counterfeit for my religion, the false flag operation centuries old of my religion to try to discredit it. When Roman Catholics aren't Christians, they call Mary the Queen of Heaven. They worship Mary. They treat her as a goddess. Actions speak louder than words. Their worshipping actions contradict their, we don't worship her words. That's lying. So, anyway, so this is Luciferian originally, and this based on that is also Luciferian, but it's about aliens. And notice that Lucifer means light bearer. There you go. So in this message, it's saying that man was created by aliens also. alien created man is another gist here. And it says, Satan will take you to conquer heaven. So aliens come from above like fallen angels. And also in Dragon Ball Z you have that myth going on, which is also referenced to the same thing. Satan will take you to conquer heaven is the message here. The Tower of Babel, represented by the triangles in countless Masonic logos, such as the dollar bills pyramid, ubiquitously. That's a reference to the Tower of Babel. It's a declaration of the Masons' desire to build a new world order, to build another Tower of Babel to conquer heaven. So anyway, atheists hate seeing that the Bible is right when beholding the totally empty cosmos. That means man is unique in all of nature. And that means that the Bible has a very sharp point. Not all atheists have this prejudice, I guess, but many do, since they cling to sci-fi. Wow! Did you see the UFO? Why conclude a clandestine military craft, the rational explanation, when you have aliens of the gaps? You know, one of the signs that the second coming is coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth. To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. The dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, and for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Stars represent angels. This genius can't detect poetry. Dragon represents Satan. It depends on the context what is literal or not. And actually, yeah, there was a literal dragon, but Satan literally possessed that dragon. And in this case, the dragon is used as a symbol for Satan, and his tail drawing the third part of the stars of heaven means that following him, you know, behind him, his tail, behind him is a third of the stars of heaven. A third of the angels rebel against God following Satan, is what this says. And they all fell to the earth. They were thrown down by God. So follow your own advice, atheist. If you want to assert a truth, first make sure it's not just an opinion that you desperately want to be true. I love being wrong, because that means in that instant I learned something new that day. His learning continues. Claiming there is no other life in the universe is like scooping up some water, looking at the cup, and claiming there are no whales in the ocean. Actually, no, because the sea has a pattern of life forms everywhere. Even in a scooped up handful of water, you have microscopic life there. So assuming more sea life is rational. But on the other hand, space is clearly empty. Don't be so blind. It's obviously empty except Earth. So assuming other places are like Earth is ignoring the pattern, which means you are ignoring evidence. The atheist ignores evidence. So that's a false equivalency fallacy. The atheist is irrational and ignores evidence. And he's supposed to be a genius by his acting like he's a genius. No life according to empirical, that is real science. That's in space, no life. But the sea is full of life, big and small. So that's a false equivalency fallacy, acting like one is the same as the other. If you scoop water, you can find microbes or critters, which doesn't translate to a gauge at space, which always results in zero life. Always zero life there. Your blind faith is irrelevant to science. Science doesn't care about your opinions and your fantasies and your Star Trek and your Star Wars. It's myth. So the atheist knows this but lies by saying that space is full of aliens, as fake as the flying spaghetti monster aliens. Atheists don't want the truth. They love fiction. He's like, science has been explaining more and more, so God is not necessary. That's like saying space keeps showing more and more emptiness, so there is no life in space, except he doesn't use the same standard. Instead, he contradicts his previous standard by saying aliens must exist. So in the first case, he says the pattern is this, therefore let's go to the absurd extreme of the hasty generalization fallacy. But then he sees a pattern and he ignores a pattern. So when it's convenient for him, he recognizes a pattern, and when it's inconvenient for him, he ignores the pattern. He's a hypocrite. The atheist Tyson is a hypocrite. Here's another one. Sci-fi author Stephen Hawking says the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge, such as this guy's illusion of having known that there was a spontaneous creation of nature, when he has zero proof, zero logic, it's his wishful thinking, and now he's dead, and he's paying for his life of lying. If aliens visit us, the outcome would be much as when Columbus landed in America, which didn't turn out well for the Native Americans. Typical Brit perpetuating black legend propaganda. España liberated America, abolishing human sacrifice and cannibalism, liberating America from all of that. Spain, where are you? Don't leave me. I have failed you. Spain also improved the technology of the Far West and established the Pax Hispanica. Spain was creationist, so it didn't commit genocide as proven by most Spanish speakers being natives. Compare that to the United States, where most English speakers aren't Native Americans, same as Tasmania and Australia, because the macro-revolutionist Brits and the macro-revolutionist United States committed genocide on dark people. Racists, unlike the Spanish. One of the conquistadores was a Congolese man. He had a higher status than most white Spaniards, and he was black. That was the Spanish Empire for you. But look at this. British Empire, with its racist legacy, deserves no respect. By the way, notice this: the UK flag has 8 rays. That's a reference to the Star of Ishtar. The United Kingdom is a Templar and Masonic tool of the Synagogue of Satan, who have persecuted their own people to hide their tracks. Seminole natives fled from the British racists to the sanctuary of Spanish Florida. Such a thing even possible? Yes, it is. The following are to show that accomplished scientists, the best in history really, were creationists, which atheists like to sweep under the rug. But I do not say that God exists because they say so. I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use, said Galileo Galilei. Since we astronomers are priests to the highest God in regard to the book of nature, it befits us to be thoughtful, not of the glory of our minds, but rather, above all else, of the glory of God, said Johannes Kepler. Science is the process of thinking God's thoughts after him. That sounded more French than German, but anyway. Geometry is one and eternal, shining in the mind of God. To know the mighty works of God, to comprehend his wisdom and majesty and power, to appreciate in degree the wonderful workings of his laws. Surely all this must be a pleasing and acceptable mode of worship to the Most High, to whom ignorance cannot be more grateful than knowledge, said Nicolaus Copernicus. The universe has been wrought for us by a supremely good and orderly creator. It is true that a little so-called philosophy inclineth man's mind to atheism, but depth in philosophy bringeth man's minds about to religion, said Sir Francis Bacon. This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could proceed only from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being, said Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a heretic. He denied the Trinity, but at least he was a creationist. Little science takes you away from God, but more of it takes you to him, said Louis Pasteur. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind, said the not as great as the other guys, Einstein. Atheism, good enough for these idiots, says atheist propaganda. Ad vedicundiam fallacy, bandwagon fallacy. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect, said Mark Twain, an atheist. You should reflect, atheists, because you follow the bandwagon to hell.